What makes the difference between a successful story and one left in the shadow of the time is perspective. How we relate to what happens to us is the most important thing. We can go through a rude page, or more beautifully said, a disaster. But we are the hero only if we survive and rise again, again, and again. When we manage to ask ourselves, what do I need to learn for this experience? What skills do I need to develop to get through this stage? We are already changing the narrative. It's no longer just, this is my luck. We are no longer mere victim of fate, but we take the reins of our lives into our own hands, and we don't wait for a prince on a white horse to save us. We save ourselves. We became the heroes of our own story. In short, I like to write. I think you figured that out by now, but let's move to my own story. The interesting part. What changed me forever began in the most unexpected way. Not with a formal greeting or a planned meeting, but with a few messages exchanged in a virtual corner of life. That's how my story with X started. At first, it was just conversation. Drowned out late into the night, filled with life ideals, shared dreams, and the desire to explore the world through each other's eyes. We had mutual friends, and he seemed like an interesting guy. Our discussions were beautifully and dreamy. We wrote me poetry, lots of it, beautiful poetry. Those poems found a special place in my heart. They were more than just verses. They were fragments of his soul given to me. He seemed like a wonderful man, loved nature, people, and had many interests similar to mine. He seemed like the perfect man. He had charming, masculine, deep voice. He was athletic and strong. He inspired confidence and was very charismatic. Whoa, I felt like he understood my pains and inner struggles because he complained about not finding his place in the world and complained about others around him not understanding his aspiration. He seemed like a lost genius to me then. He told me he had found the love of his life and couldn't wait to have a family. He admired me and complimented me. He gave me gifts. After 2 months, we were to the seaside where he proposed me. A month later, I quit my job and moved with him in another city where I knew no one. There, in his mountains, was the place I had dreamed all of my life, in peace and lots of nature. The air was clean and cool, and the sound of the city, the knocking, the hurried footsteps, the fragmented conversation seemed far away, like an unclear dream for a previous life. There, I didn't need to hurry or to play the perfect role. I didn't need to be tense anymore. Every moment followed naturally, without the pressure of meeting others' expectation. I could be me, at first, only at first. And it was there that things got worse, because it was just the two of us. He would throw tantrums of jealousy, saying I didn't know how to look at him or where I was going. Over time, I also found out why. In fact, he suspected me of doing what he was doing. All this time, every girl who seemed more interesting to him was the love of his life, and he wanted to have a family and children with her. He had a script and he used it without hesitation repeatedly. Yes, I read his messages after a long time, many suspicions and confessions. Of course, he cheated on me. Of course, he wasn't what he had initially played. He had just carefully studied my profile and adapted the lies to impress me. Nothing I did was ever good enough for him. I couldn't cook right. I didn't clean properly. I didn't know anything. All my friends were bad influence, my habits, quirks, and passions were ridiculous and pointless. Even my personal journal wasn't truly mine. And if I tried to hold him accountable and explain my boundaries, he would initially slam his fist against the wall to scare me. Then he would push or shove me, but just enough to avoid leaving serious visible marks. Of course, I was the one who took everything too personally, didn't have the sense of humor, exaggerated, and I was generally labeled as crazy. My plans had to be postponed because he wanted something spontaneous, and there was an argument if I didn't do things his way. Something, his anger would start from nothing and began to be afraid to say or do anything wrong, as if I were walking on a minefield every day. The love and the avalanche of beautiful, tender words from the beginning quickly and surely turned into a contempt, insult, and mockery. From being the queen of his life, I became the worthless human, but I still believed that my love and passion would change him. I could see his pain. I could see he was a wounded man, very insecure about himself. I could see that he needed validation. I understood his inability to control himself when he was angry. I tried to soothe his suffering with my gentleness, but even then I was cold, fake, and cunning. I thought I was doing a good things. It's just that all my gestures beautiful and their core fed a monster, an unhealthy attachment habit that were harming me. I was giving up bit by bit of myself from him for the sake of the relationship, and so I dried up. I ran out of energy, out of the will to live. I left him a few times, but he would become charming again, the ideal man, the mature and loving man. I would give in to his insistence and tears and return. He was an intelligent man who used his ability strictly in his own interest. He manipulated with skill and knew how to exploit the weakness of his adversary. After almost a year of the relationship, I found out I was pregnant. It was the last time I gave him another chance. And guess what? He was the ideal partner for many months until I gave birth, with few outbursts. But after I gave birth, he returned to his role. I had no one else. My family couldn't support me then, and I was scared. I tried calling the police once, but I knew I needed an escape plan from this prison, because that's how I felt, trapped. Emotional violence could also be exerted from a distance, and I felt very vulnerable, especially as a new mother, still adapting. He threatened to take my child away, and I actually believe he could do it because I had started to believe everything he told me about myself. Crazy, stupid, clueless, sick. I sought resource to feel better. I read. I turned to the child protection for psychological assistance in secret when I went for a walk with the child, because I depended on him financially and he didn't agree with the therapy and psychologists. The departure happened suddenly when I was trying to put the child to sleep late at night. After a previous argument, he came in recording with his phone to provoke me into reopening the subject. After much insistence, I lost my temper and I pushed him out of the room. He left the house and he told me he had already called the police and they would come in the morning to kick me out. Only me. Then I called them and I asked for a protection order. I left in the following days for a child protection shelter. A year and a half of horror followed. The child loved his father and I couldn't deprive him to bond with him. But everything I did became an object of blackmail. In front of me, he would say he wanted to reconcile, but behind my back would go to institution and say I was crazy trying to take the child away from me. Of course, he had no basis for this accusation. They were just words. I slowly recovered over these 18 months with therapy, reconnecting with friends and family, talking to a woman who had gone through similar experience, but most importantly, by detaching myself from him and returning to myself. Now, we're just parents of our child, each in our own home. There were many protests from him, but I was steadfast. I was firm and I set boundaries. I no longer accepted any kind of bad behavior from him, and I only communicated that was strictly necessary. It was hard because I wanted to justify myself and convince him many times, but I learned to stop feeding the fire. I learned to let go of control, to let people live their life exactly as they could. I reined my power and managed to understand myself better, to heal some old childhood pains, to take steps towards the person I wanted to become. Paradoxically, all this storm helped me to become more balanced and calm. Educated with degrees and diplomas, I didn't think I couldn't fix something. I didn't think this could happen to me. His behavior wasn't foreign to me. On the contrary, it was the most familiar. Although my previous boyfriends and friends adored me, my mother hadn't been as supportive, and he reminded me of her. And deep down, I agree, I saw myself exactly as he behaved towards me, because that's how I was taught by my mother's words, that I had no value, that I was good for nothing, and I didn't deserve anything good. Yes, it took such a twisted situation to understand something deep inside me, and honestly, that's often how it happens. We just needed to see the situation from the right perspective, but each one hides a treasure. And although we don't like to admit it, we learn the most important lesson through pain. Today, I know I am a wonderful person who also makes mistakes and still has a lot to learn, that I deserve the best and what's right for me, that I'm talented and many things I have skills that I can share, that I'm unique and deserve to be loved and appreciated. And all of this is true not just for me. Now I'm doing better. I've just returned to work after a 4 years break. But the most important thing is that I'm me again. That I am free, I can dream again, I can enjoy what's around me, I have an open heart to love the beauty that surrounds me. Currently, I'm focused on being a better parent and more balanced person. I know that his world story has made me an even more valuable person because I can authentically understand others in their suffering, and finally, I am at peace with my past. Today, I feel more complete, more authentic, and more connected to others. My story is not just about loss or pain, it's about transformation, about the courage to move on, and about the beauty found in humanity. And I know now, without doubt, that every experience was necessary to become the person I am today, at peace, grateful, and ready to live with an open heart.